All right, welcome back to Gentile Arena here in Chicago, Illinois for day 2, or officially day 1 of the Final Four. This is the second edition of the Short Locker, and since we ran into a few technicalities with the NCAA, we can't exactly show you all the highlights from tonight's game, which is why I have double the analysis at my side today. I'm joined by Nick Amatangelo and Bridget Murphy, and we've got some quality volleyball to talk about today, starting with Stanford and BYU. This was the 4th matchup between these two teams coming in. They had played each other for their conference title match, and it ended a little bit differently for Stanford in this case. What did you see out of the Cardinal today?
Okay, well, what I thought the match really came down to was Stanford getting it done when they needed to. Like, if you look at the big moments that you look at this game and say this moment was the defining moment for the game, or for the match, excuse me, it was Game 4 when BYU had a match point and they missed a serve, which, I mean, missed serves honestly were the name of the game tonight. Both matches, all 4 teams struggled with missed serves. And then you look at Game 5, and Stanford came up with 2 huge blocks. Brian Cook was huge in this game. He just put up some really big numbers. He got the final kill, which sealed the match, so I feel like it really came down to Stanford really putting it out on the floor when it really mattered.
Yep. And to your point, there were a combined 36 service errors in this match. There were plenty more in the next match, but also, and it just looked like BYU faded a little bit at the end.
Yeah, and that surprises me. They were ranked the #1 team in the nation this week. I mean, granted, Shane Davis didn't even vote for his own team, but they were still ranked #1. They were the #2 seed in the tournament. They had beaten Stanford 3-1 in the championship game of the West Coast Conference Finals. I was not expecting Stanford to come back and win it in 5 sets. They played their hearts out.
Yep.
I mean, Brian Cook, man on a mission, 19 kills, 2 big blocks at the end, 10 digs. Like, he had himself a game. And this was despite Robbie Sutton and Taylor Sander.
Yeah,
Taylor Sander had 28
Talking
kills.
about having yourself a game.
That was impressive. And he had almost half of BYU's kills on the night. He had 28, the team had 59.
Well, Stanford proving that it's really hard to beat a team multiple times. I know they lost 3 times, but beating a team 4 times in a season is just almost impossible at this point, because they really almost had Taylor Sanders' number. They knew that he was the guy that they're going to, and even in the press conference afterward, Brian Cook said, yeah, at the end of the 5th game, we knew Taylor Sanders where they were going, and we knew where to put those blocks, and that's how they ended up pulling up with the win.
Well, part of the problem there is that BYU got hampered by some injuries late. Michael Hatch, he came up limp at one point. He ended up spending some time on the bench. They said that who was it? I think
Jose
it was
Rivera. He had
Rivera,
a couple times where
was.
he looked like he was slow to get up after a dive.
And then I think it was Devin Young. One of their players got hit in the head with the ball early on, and he was a little bit out of it for most of the game. So I think injuries might have played a part in that, and that BYU was forced to go to their man Sander because they didn't really have that much anyone else to go to.
Which really makes it easy for the other team to read the court.
Absolutely.
Injuries, fatigue, it's all a factor at this time of year, and you were talking about having to play an opponent 4 straight times. That could have been the case with Loyola against Lewis. Didn't end up being that way. Instead, they played Penn State to see who would have the right to advance to play the Cardinal, and this, objectively, I'm going to say this was the most fun I've ever had watching a volleyball match. Not just because, Rambler pride, whatever, throw out the Wolves, but this is probably the most fun I've ever had watching a volleyball match. It went 5. This is only the 3rd time all season that a match involving Loyola has gone a full 5 sets. And even though it was fun to watch, it was a pretty sloppy match from beginning to end.
Oh, definitely. That was the first thing out of Shane Davis's mouth after the game, was that was ugly. I mean, moving on to Saturday, but man, that was an ugly game.
Right.
I mean, Penn State had 37 errors, but not to be outdone, Loyola countered with, 44, including 21 service errors? That's not Loyola volleyball.
I think Smalzer had 6 of his own service errors. That's just uncharacteristic.
After winning 8.
Wow. Finished the game with 8.
After winning best server in the country.
Yeah.
Actually, Penn State's coach said after the game that it's really telling that in the 5th game, the 2 best servers in the country went out to serve the first 2 serves, both missed.
Mm-hmm.
kind of shows you what kind of stakes this game really.
And it just seemed like everyone was pressing. Nobody wanted to be the reason their team lost or got behind, but in essence, they became kind of the reason by trying a little bit too hard.
Well, Mark Pavlik said it best, the head coach of Penn State. The beginning of that set men's volleyball back about 30 years, just with how sloppy it was, how many errors there was. But that was really the story of the game. When you have over 100 errors combined by these two teams, like, it was bad.
And, I mean, as sloppy as it was, the one consistently bright spot was Thomas Jeske.
Oh, absolutely.
Career high 24 kills, and he credits it all, to his connection with Peter Hutz, who had himself a game, actually. He had 60 assists. This is one of a handful of times he's been over 50.
Yeah.
And is there anything that you may have noticed in Jeske's game that you saw that might have been different from previous matches? Like, he obviously fed off the crowd a bit, which a packed house at Gentile, I've never heard it louder.
Likewise.
But he fed off Hutz, he fed off the crowd. What do you think was really clicking for Jeske?
Well, I mean, the match going to 5 really did have something to do with it, because the thing about Jeske is that he doesn't have a drop-off. He plays consistently, and he plays consistently well. So, I mean, he really hasn't had many off nights unless he's had issues with his toe. I know he's had some problems with that this season. But when he's playing, he's always on. He's almost always on. So when you have a match going to 5 games, then he's going to get more kills. And in a high-stakes match, he's one of those players that likes to step up to the challenge. So, I mean, it's not surprising to me, at least, that the number is very impressive, but I'm personally not surprised that he was able to put something up like that.
And you know what? He really picked up the slack that Smalzer left off. Smalzer only had 9 kills on the night, 3 attacking errors, and then, like we mentioned before, the 8 service errors. Jeske was able to pick up the slack, 24 kills. He did have 1 service error, but he countered it with an ace of his own, so it was really that balancing act that really kept the Ramblers in the game. Now, this is the first time in the history of the men's volleyball Final Four that both of the semifinal matches went to 5 games. Do you guys think that had anything to do with the fact that this is the first time that they've expanded the tournament field to 6 teams making it?
Well, I think that the parity across volleyball was a little more apparent, and that you truly got it might not have been, if you have some of the better teams just coming in and only playing 1 game apiece instead of having those 6 games, you get the better team playing an extra game, that little bit of added fatigue. I think that contributed a little bit to the next round, that game also going 5. You're not going to have any walk-away matches in the Final Four, especially when you have tired teams.
Yeah, I mean, look at Penn State. They played Lewis, a tough game, had to do a quick turnaround, play Loyola. It's tough, and especially in this gym. It's not their home. They're not used to this gym. They'd only played here 1 time earlier this season, and it is not an easy arena for anyone who has talked to a volleyball player who's played here. The ceilings are low. The players say that the lights are an advantage as well, and the Jumbotron hangs, and that is definitely a factor in the way that teams play here.
And when you have the decibel level turned through the roof like we had tonight, it gets even harder, and it's going to be the same kind of atmosphere out here on Saturday. It's going to be Loyola and Stanford for all the marbles on Loyola's home floor.
Because at this point in the game, all of the teams are good. All of the teams are big. All of the teams are strong. And then it comes down to that mental edge. Everybody, you have to dig and you have to jump, and whoever digs deepest and jumps highest is the one who's going to come up with it all. And you got to have your mind in the right place. Their bodies are there. There's no training they can do between now and Saturday that will up their game and push them over the edge physically. But mentally, they have to be there and they have to be ready.
All right. Well, to that point, Stanford's been on the road for 9 days now, I think, at least 9-10 days. So that's got to start to play a factor. It'll be almost 2 weeks by the time that they're ready to play the Ramblers on Saturday. I think that the edge has to go to Loyola. They're playing on their home court. They're the number 1 seed in the tournament, number 2 in the nation technically, but they've been number 1 basically the whole year. I have to say I don't see Stanford coming in here and beating the Ramblers.
However, I must say that the Stanford crowd has impressed me. California is many, many miles away, but they brought a crowd and they are loud. Against BYU, they were yelling the whole time, just screaming, just being really, really good volleyball fans. And I think that is something that Penn State didn't have tonight against Loyola. Loyola's definitely going to have a huge home crowd, but at the same time, a little bit of cheering for the other team get people a long way.
Well, Coach Pavlik said the Ramblers out-physicaled them tonight. The Ramblers are going to have to do the exact same thing against Stanford. It's going to be a Saturday night matchup. For Loyola is going for their 26th, what is it, 26 or 27?
Yeah, 26, 27, something
it's
like that.
some astronomical number at this point.
Straight wins.
Exactly. And we'll see if that little motivational tactic from Coach Davis paid off, because he told his guys, I didn't vote. You lost that on the number 1 seed. Go earn it. So now they have their chance to earn it. And we'll see about that Saturday night. We'll be here and hope you will be too. That's it for this edition of the Short Locker. We're coming at you one more time post-championship from Gentile Arena on Saturday. But in the meantime, for Nick Amatangelo and Bridget Murphy, I'm Joe Flaherty, signing out. Have a good night.